in office hours, we have a couple of quick updates before we turn it over to Q&A. As always, just want to remind everyone of the different mechanisms that we have to engage. There is this weekly office hours for those in US and EMEA. We have a monthly office hours for APAC on the second Wednesday monthly. And then we do have focus time for development of Python and Java. So if you're looking to be able to collaborate and help with us, feel free to join in there. So there's a couple of quick announcements that I want to go through before we turn over to Q&A. The first one is we finally have a location for our recordings. So all of those will be uploaded to a specific YouTube playlist within the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. And so I'll go ahead and link to a blog post that we posted out that has further details and has the exact link for that as well. So we've been able to go back about a month of the recordings that we've had and be able to share those out. And then moving forward, it'll be a week after a session that those will be uploaded by and on the YouTube playlist. So for all of you who are looking to be able to view different demos we do or go through Q&A as well, it'll all be located in that location. And then on the next slide, I do want to dive into a quick ask that we have of the community. We have Microsoft Build coming up, and we'll have a dedicated session for Semantic Kernel. But we're looking for individuals who are willing to give us testimonials and record a brief video. By filling in the form, you are consenting for Microsoft to reach out and use your recording. We'll have additional details that we'll go through once you have a recording. But we'd love to be able to learn more about what you like about Semantic Kernel, top 3 words that you would use to describe it, and then what you've been building with AI as well. So I put the form link in chat. We'd love to hear from you and be able to feature you at Build. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to Q&A. I see that there was one in the beginning from Chris around the timeline for Python 1.0. Chris, do you mind elaborating? Is there specific things that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, I just had a question from a customer about when that'll be like released GA. If it hasn't already been, I don't think it has yet. Just looking for when that Python version will be available officially.
Yeah, so our target is still Microsoft Build. So if you want to point the customer to our Build roadmap blog, that would be the best place to send them to.
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Other questions people have? Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So if there's anyone who wants to come off of mute, if they have anything that they're diving into in terms of help needed or just questions that you have, we'd love to be able to dive into them.
And Chris did share a link to one of our latest blogs. Let me go ahead and I'm personally super excited about this. Evan blogged about kind of the updates coming as sort of Microsoft Build. The session that our team will be presenting is called Bridge the Chasm Between Your ML Apps and, your ML and App Devs. And this is where we'll announce V1 for both Python and C# and Java. But we were pleasantly surprised to find that there's a ton of other teams that are also doing sessions at Build with Semantic Kernel. A lot of RAG ones with like MongoDB. There's 2 of those. Some with dealing with memory that you can see right here. And then there's a few sessions with .NET Aspire for folks that use .NET. And there'll be both a lab, and there's actually another session that we're going to get added to this list that's also going to be using Semantic Kernel, showing how you can use .NET and .NET Aspire and Semantic Kernel together to help you have observability and DevOps over your AI applications. So get excited. Build is only, I think, less than 5 weeks away at this point. Many of these will not be recorded. If you click on any of the sessions, you can see, oh, this one's actually pre-recorded. Oh, that's nice. But this one, I think it says will not be recorded. So the only time you'll be able to see it is if you register and give it a watch. Our top line session, though, Bridge the Chasm Between Your ML and App Devs, it will be recorded so you can watch that at a later date. Okay. And to Sophia's point earlier about the form, at the beginning of our session, we really want to show how the community is using Semantic Kernel, how they're what they like about it. So if you are interested in being part of our build session, being part of kind of a highlight reel on YouTube, on the official Microsoft YouTube channel, go ahead and fill this out. We'll reach back out. We'll also have a blog post later to collect those videos. But this is a great way for you to kind of put yourself out there, get some visibility, show the rest of the world that you are kind of using the latest, greatest in AI. And yeah, you can see yourself on a build stage. Okay.
I have a question about Matthew. I don't know if this is the right place to ask it, but basically, I have a question about the integration between semantic kernel and kernel memory, the parallel project. I don't know if there is already some sample in our GitHub explaining better how to integrate this, because I have seen that there are some samples on the kernel memory GitHub, but imagine that I want to implement a simple kernel having two plugins. One, for instance, to search documents on a Azure search, so by using kernel memory, and another plugin that, for instance, could be the web search. And I mean, I have no idea how to implement these two things, because it seems to me that kernel memory basically implements a kernel that is only able to do that kind of task, basically search in a memory. I don't know if I'm wrong something or...
Yeah, I was pulling up the two projects. And let me just to reiterate, so you want to be able to combine both searching the web and then searching some internal documents with kernel memory. Is that right?
In general, yeah, searching on the documents and doing some other task that I would use by using other plugins. So yeah. The web search is just an example, but yeah.
So I don't know if we have an example that demonstrates this. I can talk through it briefly. One reason why we don't have a sample, at least in the semantic kernel repo, is we try to only put things that we feel can be deployed to production enterprise scenarios. Kernel memory, as a reminder, folks on the call, it is, while it's a sister project, it's treated more as a research project, and it doesn't have the same level of support as semantic kernel. If you love it, if it unblocks you, if you use it for your scenarios, which we've seen many customers do it, like go ahead and use it. But that's one reason why it doesn't show up as prominently within the semantic kernel repo. Now, in terms of how you would actually build the scenario that you were describing, one of the nice things about kernel memory is that you can deploy it as a web service, which means it also comes with a plugin manifest. And I'm not sure, it's been a while since I played around with the kernel memory project. But you'll have an endpoint that gives you a plugin.
Yeah.
And with that, you can then import that into semantic kernel. And then if you import this as a plugin inside of semantic kernel, and then maybe you have another plugin that searches the web or performs some action to CRM or sends emails or have you. If you add all those plugins to the kernel, your AI through automatic function calling can then mix and match these different pieces together. So that's kind of the high level of how you would combine these two projects, more specifically to address the need that you have.
Okay. Great. But you were saying that this is not, let's say, production-ready implementation at the moment.
So,
The kernel.
so what I would say with kernel memory is it is a project that folks have taken to production. So there's just frankly not that many memory projects in the .NET space. So if this is like a need, this might be one of the few and only options out there for you to use. But the caution I would provide is this is more of a research project from a Microsoft standpoint. It does not have the same level of support as Semantic Kernel.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Cool. Great question. Great question.
Great. Other questions? I'm not seeing anything in chat, but individuals feel free to come off of mute as well. Yeah, Logan.
Just a quick one. I might have missed this. Where are these being recorded now and published?
Yeah, I'll go and link to the blog post. It's a Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel, and there's a playlist where they'll get published a week after the date.
Brilliant. Thank you.
It's exciting to finally have an official home for our videos. We can all thank Sophia for figuring that out and cutting through all of the red tape in Microsoft. Thank you, Sophia, and it means all of you can catch up on all the great office hours we've had before.
Yeah, looking forward to now having a place. So the ones from the last month as well, we've gone ahead and uploaded. And so if you do want to review those, feel free, and we'll go ahead and have the recordings moving forward as well. I see we have another hand if you want to come off of mute.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Hey, Matthew, like this is a very general question, right? So it's kind of coming from the previous question. Now, typically, in terms of scenarios of implementing kernel, let's say you talked about the searching from web or some SharePoint systems and multiple systems and getting to a point of answering or till the point of taking action sounds to be good. Now, if I, for example, if I'm asking kernel to build, building a function to search from SharePoint and create a blog, right? And I might have plugins which does creating a blog. Now, without intersection of the user, like before creating the blog, I should be able to make sure that if he's comfortable with these things and certain questions and stuff, and then I should be able to let him create the blog. Now, how does this kind of a scenario typically work? I mean, how do you see other people using this? In terms of when something happens and then automatically, without the user concern, is the application taking action, or how I don't know if you got the question, but if you got the question, you can just give it in your own terms. But I can explain it better.
Yeah. So there was a lot in your question, so I'll try to unpack some of that stuff. So it sounds like the basic scenario is like, oh, I want to ask this agent to write a blog. It should be smart enough to go, oh, instead of just making up random stuff, I need to go search, do some research, find some information from, say, a SharePoint site, pull that, read it, go, oh, okay, this is the information. I'm going to go ahead and write a blog about it, right? And you kind of correctly called out, to make that work, you would need both a plugin to search and retrieve information from a SharePoint site with different documents, and another one that actually gives it the ability to write a document. You might have another one, so you might have a third one that actually publishes that blog out.
Right.
Now, I'll skip to the end of your question, which is like, what's the best way of doing this without user approval, kind of being a human in the loop? I would actually go, no, don't do that. You have to have responsible AI. The human has to be in the loop, right? And then the next question is like, where do you actually bring in the human for your particular scenario? I would say if you're building a responsible AI application, you don't really need the human until that very final step when it's publishing, right? And the way you would do that in Semantic Kernel is that particular function that actually publishes the blog. You would provide a hook, you would provide a filter within Semantic Kernel to say, oh, before I actually run the publish method get approval from the user, and so you can have some UI flow that does that, right? So that's one bit of guidance. The other challenge, though, is you are asking about a really long process,
Mhm.
and the AIs, at least the LM models that have been built today, are not good at that. They expect a human to be in the loop to kind of like motivate them, ask them questions, give them feedback, make sure that they keep going to the very end, right? Right. For that is where we see having multiple agents, one kind of being a pretend user and another one like doing the work, is where it starts, where you can get that collaboration, and then the human can no longer be in the loop, right? These two different agents can work together. So we've seen initial research from Autogen. Again, if you are not familiar with Autogen, they were one of the ones that kind of pioneered these multi-agent collaboration pieces. And if we go to Semantic Kernel, what our goal is to build an enterprise version of this multi-agent collaboration pattern. We have a bunch of PRs from agent. We have a bunch of PRs right now trying to build this out. We've had one go in, closed. Over here. And so if you are interested in kind of our progress of getting multi-agent framework inside of Semantic Kernel, you can check out this PR and see some of the concepts that we're introducing. There was a really good discussion earlier of, hey, we keep hearing that the goal in the .NET space is to align the Autogen .NET project with the Semantic Kernel one. That's still the goal. There's some things missing within Semantic Kernel to make that a reality, but once that is, you'll start seeing more integration as it happens. So I talked a lot to talk about those different points of the question. Did I hit on the most things? Did you have follow-ups?
No, absolutely, Patty. I mean, no, you were just right on the string. One thing is, what we used to be doing previously is do all this thing, not with the manual in the loop, but a defined workflow, right? So you get the data, extract the entities, and kind of make sure that everything is right, falling in place, and then you take the action. So now I'm just trying to, when we are using semantic kernel, so most of it is the decisions are taken dynamically. Right, so that's where the concern comes in. So should we stick with the regular workflows and keep the burden on the developer teams, or just give it to semantic kernel, let them take decisions and go on? So that's a kind of a slight marginal thing, but it's I think it's more of a depending upon the use cases you will have to take a call.
Yes. What I would also add to it, like y'all, back in the olden days, still today, we have processes, right? And then at the end of the processes, you have to like check, did we complete all the steps, right?
Right.
I think as we build these AI applications, you don't want to lose that, right? We're all in enterprise companies, like to reduce risk, like there has to be some amount of accountability. There has to be some box checking to make sure things are right, right? The difference is previously, either all of the code was so deterministic that you could like automatically check these boxes, or a human had to verify and check all these different boxes.
Mhm.
In the cases where you can deterministically with native code determine if a box is checked, if the process has been done, do not change that, right? Code is good. Keep using the code. Like that is a good thing. But the value with AI now is we can start automating processes that aren't as deterministic. Like you mentioned writing a blog. How do we know if a blog is good enough? How do we make sure that it's using information from the SharePoint site? These are all questions that a human would have to ask themselves before they approved for the blog to go out, right? And the goal with these AIs is how do we automate that approval process so that the user is no longer necessarily having to do all of these kind of constant revisions, right? And so creating an agent called the approval agent, where you say in your system prompt, these are the 10 things that you have to look out for before you give a thumbs up, before you give approval for this blog, right? That's where you can start taking those same kind of processes, those checkboxes that humans used to have to do, and give it to an agent. And then kind of going back to the multi-agent framework where you have like Autogen or soon Semantic Kernel, if you have the agent that's doing work and you also combine it with an agent that approves, you can get much further with writing this blog, getting it to a higher quality bar so that when a human does come in and does that final approval, they aren't going, oh my God, an AI wrote this. This is awful. I have to start from scratch. It's, oh, yeah, there's a few things that I, the human, need to fix, but this is already 90, 95% of the way there.
Totally. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Great. And I see we have a hand from Luca, and then I'll get to the one in chat as well. Luca, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Matthew, I have a question about Assistant API. I saw that they are supported in the experimental namespace. I don't know if this is because they are related also to the agent implementation that you were mentioning before, or they are, yeah, okay. So I don't know if at this stage you can share the roadmap, I mean, about when you think that functionality could be ready for a stable release. I'm talking about only the Assistant API that maybe it may be easier than the Autogen idea that there is behind.
Yeah. So what's going on? So late last year, OpenAI released the Assistance API. We jumped on it. We built an integration with the Semantic Kernel. That's what you're seeing today inside of that experimental namespace. It's a very, very tight coupling to the Assistance API. And the value that Semantic Kernel provides in this space is, oh, just like with automatic function calling, you can define your functions, you can give it as tools, and then the AI through the Assistance API uses those tools and performs actions and yada, 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 right? So all that's there. That's what you can see. The challenge that we had is we too tightly built our implementation on top of the Assistance API, which makes sense. It was the only assistant or agent API available at the time. Since then, there have been other implementations of what is an agent and how agents work together and how you interact with them. And so what we are working on right now, the PR I linked in the chat, is basically our stab at creating a further abstraction so that an assistant API agent can collaborate and work with a non-assistant API agent. So once that work is done, that's when you'll start seeing us remove that experimental tags from everything. In the meantime, it does have logging. I would say it's fairly hardened. The main risk that you would have is there will be breaking changes as we go from the current implementation to the new implementation. And our goal is by build, it'll still probably be experimental, but the new patterns should be in place so that there's fewer breaking changes in the future. Did that help answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
And then Jordan, do you want to go ahead and come off of me? I'm happy to go through what you put in chat as well.
Sure. So both the semantic kernel planners as well as the assistance API are able to determine that an external function call is needed to answer the user's question. Could you talk more about how you see these merging, changing, or when we ought to choose one of the over the other? And will the planners eventually be deprecated in favor of the assistance API?
So let's first talk about how any of these things actually know what to call next. So behind the scenes, what we're using, and both OpenAI is using for their assistance API, is a capability in the model called function calling. So we go to the OpenAI docs, we can read more about function calling here. And if you go to the chat API, we can see what a calling function looks like. You pass in the entire chat history, and then you also define the tools that are available. So that's the underlying technology that's there. In Semantic Kernel, we give you access to this raw API through automatic function calling. That's something that we provide. You define all your native functions, you give it to the AI, and it decides what to call. The Assistance API, the way it works, we go to Assistance, is very similarly, you give the list of tools to the assistant. And behind the scenes, The OpenAI service uses function calling to determine which tool, whether it's the ones you provide or maybe they're out-of-the-box ones to call in order to get something to work. So they're already using the same underlying technology. The next question is, okay, well, if they both do it, why should I use one or the other? The nice thing about the Assistance API is they manage the state of your chat history, and they come with out-of-the-box features like their retrieval tool and their code interpreter tool. So if any of those features are of value to you, then great. Use the Assistance API. You'll probably be able to build your application a little bit faster, and you get some whiz-bang features out of the box. There are times, however, where this is not a good thing. For example, if you need greater control over your chat history, if you want to save it yourself for compliance reasons, if you want to do advanced prompt injection or prompt engineering techniques, you can't do that with their threads because they manage it. It's in their cloud, it's untouchable, and you're stuck with what you get, right? And so you asked a really good question. When, if at all, are we going to deprecate some of the functionalities in Semantic Kernel in favor of OpenAI or Assistance API? I would say because of the reason of there are times when you don't want to use this because it's too limiting for whatever reason. We will always support kind of the ability to use the underlying APIs, right? There is another kind of thing baked into your question. We have a lot of different planners right now. We have one called the handlebars planner. We have another one called stepwise function calling. We are thinking about, do we actually keep those around if just pure automatic function calling gets you 95, 99% of the way there? And frankly, we've been confusing customers of, oh, planners are amazing, but this is, in a lot of times, what they actually need. So we are looking at, do we deprecate our current planners and just recommend people to use automatic function calling that comes out of the box so that they move faster with their AI applications? Did that help answer your question at all?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. And then I guess the last reason why we'll always keep this around is we pride ourselves in Semantic Kernel being able to work with most, if not all, models. And now that Google's Gemini has function calling, Claude, Mistral, Llama has some function calling examples, we want to give you the flexibility to build agents that can call tools on those models and not necessarily lock you into the Assistance API, which is only provided by OpenAI. Okay. Great question.
Great. Other questions people have?
All righty. Well, in that case, maybe this is a short office hours. A few people come off mute. I guess what I would say is if you do have questions that come up in between now and the next office hours, which Sophia we should talk about next office hours and when they'll actually be. But we do have our GitHub discussions that we have revived. Again, thank you to Sophia. We're now being much more responsive to folks. So if you do have any questions, feel free to come into our discussions area. You can see we're getting much more activity and getting things resolved and getting answers to folks. So this is a great place to kind of ask what's going on so that we can help you. And if you are still on Discord, party on in Discord, this is what we have a triage meeting almost every single day to make sure we get everyone's discussion questions answered. So that is the place. I'll actually link to it. This is the place to get any of your burning questions answered. And I love it because it's also really easy for other folks to find through something like Google search. Great.
Perfect. Well, if there are no other questions, we'll go and close today's office hours. Next week, we won't have office hours. You'll see a cancellation for the meeting. And so it'll be the week after that we'll go ahead and meet again. But as Matthew mentioned, GitHub discussions is a great place to come. We're on the Semantic Kernel team are actively engaging and triaging those questions to get back to you. As Matthew said, if you are in Discord, feel free to continue. It's just going to be more focused on customer engagement, and we won't have a daily scrum like we're doing right now to triage. But with that, we'll go and end today's session. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.